Hidden in the corners of familiar platforms, digital cults thrive, not in secret temples or underground bunkers, but in group chats, voice calls, and anonymous forums. These aren't just edgy communities, they're organized, manipulative, and disturbingly real. From twisted ideologies to ritualistic control and online extortion, these cults operate in plain sight, spreading like a virus through apps millions of people use every day. In today's video, we're diving deep into some of the most disturbing internet cults ever uncovered. Groups built not around belief, but control. Not around spirituality, but pure evil. Please like and subscribe, it helps more than you know. And now let's get into some of the most disturbing internet cults the internet has ever seen. Let's begin. And this video is for educational and documentary purposes only. It discusses real-world crimes and disturbing content that has been publicly reported and prosecuted. Viewer discretion is advised. 764. In the dark corners of the internet, some communities don't just break the rules. They shatter every boundary of human decency. What began as a twisted online group spiraled into one of the most disturbing digital cults of our time. It wasn't built by career criminals or shadowy elites, but mostly by teenagers, kids. And what they did? It's hard to believe without seeing the evidence. This is the story of 764, a transnational exploitation ring that spanned across Discord servers, Telegram chats, and anonymous forums. With roots in extremist ideologies and sadistic manipulation, this group has left a trail of devastation across the globe, from the United States to Sweden, from Brazil to France. Dozens have already been arrested. Hundreds of victims have come forward. And the worst part, 764 is still active. It all began in early 2020. Several groups sprung up at an exponential rate online after the pandemic hit. Seen as nobody had anything to do in real life, most people turned to the internet. There was a specific set of people that decided to use their free time in one of the most malicious ways possible. Groups began to rise up, with their aim and goal to extort individuals. And there were over 20 different groups: CVLT, Court, Cascar, Harm Nation, League Society, 7997, 8884, 2992, 555, Slit Town, 545, 6996, 404, NMK, 696, 984, 1378, 303, SR1, XVN, Hell, and No Lives Matter. Altogether, these groups were known as the Community, or the COM for short. These groups were prevalent everywhere, but mainly Discord. The criminals involved? Teenagers. A lot of the people committing these heinous acts were teens, and they were doing it to other teens. A common theme among these groups was winning over approval of others, and so the goal was to be the most evil. These kids were hung up on trying their best to torture others in the literal sense. A victim of the COM said, "There was this 13-year-old girl. On stream, she cut her entire body for them. She would do this sometimes daily. They were called cut shows. They would have her cut things into herself, and then they would allow others to tell her what to cut into herself." This is the same girl that one leader had convinced to kill her kittens on stream. These abusers would also groom children. If you could get a girl that was ungroomed and then groom her for the first time, that gave you status. Once groomed, the next objective was to go as far as possible with them. You wouldn't want me to punish you the way I would make you right now anyways. I don't care. I don't care at all. Anything you want, I'm game. I'm serious. I'll burn myself with a hot spoon. One day, however, it was one of those teenagers who undeniably took things so far, with several members being arrested swiftly, including Bradley Chance Cadenhead. Growing up, his circumstances weren't the best. In fact, they were pretty terrible. Though at first he had a loving religious family, Bradley was bullied at church ever since he was just 6 years old. At just 10 years old, his loving, happy family began to swindle out of control. He was an easy target at school. He would also cut himself not long after his mom left, but it was from here that he found gore and torture online, slowly becoming fascinated with it. Right before ninth grade, freshman year of high school started, custody switched around. He would now be living with his mother. But just as he turned 14, the pandemic hit. But in August 2020, school reopened and he wasn't ready. He couldn't go back. He faked illness at times and would sometimes throw up from anxiety of returning to school. He stopped going completely after a week and started staying in his room 24/7. This drastic exposure to the internet, especially the dark side, after being so mentally vulnerable for the last half-decade, resulted in a grim combination. He chose one of the worst paths possible. He began messaging strangers on Discord under the username Felix. He built his own online persona and began learning how to groom and extort others who were similar to his age or even younger. At 15 in January 2021, Cadenhead dropped out of school officially. Cadenhead had learned enough, more than enough to start his own sick and twisted operation, 764. 764 was inspired heavily by the Order of Nine Angels, another cult. It followed ideals such as neo-Nazism, Satanism, fascism, etc. Cadenhead made the first 764 Discord server the same month, January 2021. He would make girls send him explicit photos, then blackmail them into self-mutilation or even torturing and murdering their own pets. He would often brag about this. Felix: I make bitches eat their house pets and cut for 4 hours straight. I got proof too. He had terabytes of explicit photos. Some of this involved very young people. He adopted the name Felix, the Cheese Pizza God. He was incredibly arrogant, claiming the feds would never get him. Anonymous: Dude, what the fuck is wrong with you? I'm reporting this to the police. You can't just post cheese pizza like that. I've already been reported to the FBI 15 times and they haven't done shit. I'm device banned from almost every email service. I've been through 400 Felix accounts, 100 fake accounts, banned on Roblox twice. 2 months later, on the 25th of August, 2021, the police showed up at his doorstep. They walked in with a search warrant, where Cadenhead emerged from his room in the most disgusting state possible. His hair was disheveled and stinking. The room reeked of body odor, and a main laptop was confiscated, with 20 different pictures blatantly open of girls engaged in certain acts. Further digging found that children had carved I Heart Cheese Pizza 764 and Brad is a pedo into themselves. Being declared fit to stand trial as an adult, he pleaded guilty on the advice of his attorney, waiving trial. He was to be at home with an ankle monitor until sentencing in May of 2023. At the hearing, all the truth came to light. The evidence presented at the punishment hearing showed that the defendant possessed images of young children not only being abused, but also choked, beaten, suffocated, and grievously injured. The defendant used these images to coerce others into mutilating themselves, including carving his screen name into their bodies and harming animals. The judge sentenced Bradley Cadenhead to 80 years in prison. But the story doesn't end here. 764 is still very much active to this day. In February of 2021, 22-year-old Caleb Merritt is arrested for the kidnapping and SA of a young girl. And this piece of trash was sentenced to a deserved 350 years in prison. He had groomed her into thinking she loved him, making her testify that it was her intention to run away with Merritt because she loved him. But the whole ordeal was somehow connected to a CVLT Discord server after Discord themselves filed a report to the police. Their system flagged the girl making SH statements and threats. Only after 3 days of messaging, he managed to convince her to meet him where they had relations. Merritt will only be eligible for parole at 54 years old. Considering how even normal criminals frown upon these predators, however, it's very likely Merritt will never see the light of day again. Thank God. In November of 2021, Angel Alameda, living in Queens, New York, was arrested for being in possession of a firearm while being a felon. In his house, police found bloody paper with sketches of the Zodiac Killer, as well as tons of other cult-like memorabilia tied to Order of Nine Angels and 764. And around the same time, a girl had forced a man into burning himself alive on camera in a Discord voice chat. Watch the disturbing Discord user's video on my channel if you want the whole story there. Nino Luciano H, or Tobes, live streamed himself on a Discord voice chat attacking an 82-year-old man, and 2 weeks later, stabbed a 74-year-old woman to death on voice chat. He did this to prove himself to Roma, a 764 affiliated Discord server. He was sentenced to 14 years in prison. Way too short if you ask me. December 2023. Kalana Limpkin was arrested for founding and running a 764 splinter group. He was arrested as the result of a 7-month investigation. The same month, a user who went by the name Rabid was brought up on federal cheese pizza charges in Michigan. The culprit? 47-year-old Richard Anthony Reyna Densmore. He ran a splinter group of 764 known as Sewer, but managed to get away with a plea deal, being sentenced to only 30 years in prison for his actions. It was at this point that law enforcement throughout the USA was starting to see just how widespread and cancerous Bradley's actions were, leading to the National Security Division of the Justice Department to put out a very bold statement. This group seeks to do unspeakable harm to children to advance their goals of destroying civilized society, fomenting civil unrest, and ultimately collapsing the US government institutions. As utterly dystopian as it may sound, it's very accurate, with each member arrested being somehow worse than the last. The entire network was classed as a transnational threat. In October of 2024, another 14-year-old was detained for attacking several victims in public. He had been classed as a terrorist for this by his homeland, Sweden. Going by slaying online, he attacked a woman with a knife and upon his arrest, made a statement. Terror is not about age. Same month, Australia. 28-year-old Jake Thompson Vandermeer was arrested after a 2-month-long investigation was set in motion from a brave young girl who had called the National Kids Helpline after he had abused her through extortion. Already, over 15 different individuals have been arrested and brought up on charges, not just from the US, but from Romania, Sweden, France, Australia, the UK, and who knows how many more are out there. The worst part, only half of the year's gone by, and we aren't even halfway through the list of people who have been caught as part of 764. January. A 17-year-old student living in Bucharest, Romania, is facing extradition by the FBI to face charges in the USA after he made over 450 bomb threats to schools, hospitals, and government institutions all over America and the UK. February. 25-year-old Jero Jamie Tina Jero pled guilty to online enticement, 3 different counts of producing cheese pizza, 3 counts of distributing cheese pizza, 5 counts of interstate communication of threats, cyberstalking, and conspiracy to commit murder. Prasad and Leonidas Varaginas were charged with operating a child exploitation enterprise, and I know I'm mispronouncing all these guys' names, but who gives a shit? These guys are a piece of trash. They don't even deserve to have their name pronounced correctly. They conspired with other group members to create and distribute images depicting the exploitation of people. And if you're not convinced these guys are horrible enough, they had even created guides, detailed instructions on how to groom and extort these victims. The 2 leaders and several other members would have pissing contests on who had the most content. You don't have as much cheese pizza as me though, and I can't get over how upset I get reading all this. These people are so horrific. They created even more graphic guides on how to continue committing these vile acts. The amount of evidence against these 2 is so overwhelming, I'd have to make a whole video just to get through it all. Brazilian police arrested a group of people who were affiliated with 764 after they had planned to stage a mass attack during the Lady Gaga concert. As if that wasn't bad enough, they were conspiring to perform a satanic human sacrifice of a child or baby live during the concert. During the production of this video, a viewer of the channel reached out to me. They're a survivor of 764 or a similar splinter group, and with their full consent, they've agreed to share their story. Their voice and identity have been altered to protect their privacy. But what you're about to hear is real and difficult. Please listen with care. Hey, how you doing?
I'm ready when you are.
All right, cool. Like I said in kind of the before interview, whatever, you can stop or skip any question at any time or whatever. Just let me know. Totally fine with whatever. How did you first come across the group or individual involved in 764 or a associated splinter group?
Okay, it was like I was like 10, well, 11 times. I had like just gotten my first phone, and I was feeling really lonely because that was during COVID. And eventually, I got roped onto Discord. And at first, I was like on like those anime servers that devolved into things that were like pro ship. I don't know if you're familiar with that term, but that has like a very heavy link to things like pedophilia and abuse. And I was in a very dark place at that time, so I thought those servers were good support instead of what they actually were, what I was suffering with. And then I came across this guy. I don't want to call him, I can't remember his real name, just call him Brian. And he told me, that, like, he saw my photos and he thought I was, like, super cute and asked me to join the server he ran. And so I did. It was definitely like a splinter group because I did my research on the main part of it all. And while there was like some talks definitely of that, it was kind of different in ways, but it was definitely very similar in most.
Okay, thank you so much for sharing that. And how I assume it was Discord, but what platforms did they use to contact you in general?
Oh my god, TikTok, Discord, Telegram, and then there's this site. I hate it with every fiber of my being. It's called Blue. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's like just filled with pedophiles and people who like those disgusting, depraved things, and they forced me to make it for it.
Okay, so they kind of first got in contact with you on Discord, and then they kind of linked in all of your other social medias. They kind of found your other social medias, correct?
Yes.
Okay, that makes sense. And if you want, like I said, stop or skip any question. But can you like kind of describe the manipulation or abuse? Did it start off slow, or did you kind of know like, hey, this is weird and I should maybe, back off, or was it kind of a curiosity thing, or how did they approach you with that sort of thing?
Okay, take in mind when I first had met these people, um, I was already kind of slowly being introduced to this behavior via different, like, Polycon and Shotokan and Proship groups, but it really doubled down when I got into this server where it was pro self harm, pro eating disorder, and they had showed gore videos, and that's where I met the first guy, and he was really sweet. Yeah, he was really sweet and kind, and told me that he loved me and that he needed me. He wanted my love so badly, and then eventually, after like persistence and him sending news of himself, I sent him a few of my chest first, and my stomach, and then he brought me into his server. And then he asked for more, and then there was four guys, like 6'6", and like one woman were like DMing me and calling me special and saying I was so good for doing exactly what they said. And they would ask me to do other things like eat food off of the floor or carve things into my thighs and arms and ask me to send photos, proof. They praised me for that. And if I said no or said I didn't want to, if I was tired, they would like ignoring me or even blocking me. And the only way I could quote unquote bring them back is for like that in the public server for them to do it.
Okay, thank you for sharing. Like I said, I mean, I am making this video because this group is just so utterly disgusting. And thank you so much for sharing. I hope this can, help other people that might be going through something similar.
Mhm.
And my next question was, were they ever charming or kind to you? And it sounds like they were. So they were, I guess, skilled, quote unquote, on kind of just manipulating you? Like, so they're not always abusive. They're kind of charming in a way.
No, no, they treated me. They said I was like their special little. I hate this because I am now a trans person, but and they knew that at the time, but they would still call me like such a pretty girl or such a special girl, and said, "Oh, you think you're white? That's kind of hot."
Okay, so they just kind of bombarded you with, compliments and stuff like that.
Yeah, and they would like, and then they innocently come like, "Oh, can I see your drawings? Can I see your favorite stuffed animals?" And they really act like it, and I acted more childish than I already was.
Okay, thank you. That makes sense. Thank you for sharing.
It started when I was 10, and I was finally able to break out of all of those spaces. Like officially, I was 13 to 14, so it was a lot of like these like 4-ish years of that.
And looking back, was there a moment where you realized that like this isn't normal, but still stayed anyway? And what kept you in it? Was it blackmail? Was it promises? Or did they use threats? Or what kind of kept you in this uncomfortable space?
I always knew that it was bad because, and this was the first guy that had tried to hit on me. Like I was on Omegle, I was actively texting like 30-year-old guys from different spaces, and it's because I just ignored all the warning signs because my mom was going through a lot of mentally challenging things, and she couldn't really be there for me. And I was parentified in a way. And my dad, he was borderline a deadbeat, would always talk crap about my mother, but was never there for me either. And so I had nobody. And so I didn't care how I got the attention or what attention it was. I just wanted some form of positive attention, even if I knew it made me feel disgusting. I just needed it. And how that kept me in was that cycle of praise and then stopping it, like asking for more to reset the praise again. And I was kind of like, at least in this, I guess, anime part of the group, I was considered like a minor celebrity. Like everyone knew my handle, they would pass it around, they would pass around their photos. I don't think these guys have been caught yet because they were really smart about everything they did. One guy had showed me, and he had like a whole setup with just a bunch of gear. He constantly bragged about how he did a bunch of illegal dealings and that no one could catch him because he was too smart about it.
Yeah, that's a consistent theme against a lot of these guys. And, I covered too in the video that we're doing just that, bragging about it. And sooner than later, the FBI came showing up at their doorstep for this sort of stuff. So it's going to get them at one point. Were there others involved in your experience? Any other sort of, or was it just kind of one person or just a bunch of people? I think you kind of answered this briefly, but it was a group, correct?
Yes, it was a bunch of people, and they would joke about how they would pass me around, they'd pass around their phones and my usernames and everything because they quote unquote knew with enough bitching and begging they would get what they wanted.
Okay.
So I was easy with that.
Mm. And kind of moving on to the end of it, but how did you get out, or how did it overall end? You said briefly that you kind of just blocked them on everything and deleted all social medias, or what made you realize like enough is enough and you had to end it? And what made you, not want to stay because you were scared of, something happening or backlash of leaving these guys?
So, funnily enough, it wasn't technically me, but it technically wasn't. So I have multiple disorders because of how I was treated as a child. One of them being a dissociative identity disorder, and just I guess at one point, um, I kind of just blacked out, and I woke up, and everything was gone. My Discord, my socials, everything was blocked and deleted, and I couldn't get anything back. And so I don't really know exactly. I just remember like the night before everything went dark, I was going to bed and I felt terrible because a guy, one of the guys, um, had told me that I was no fun anymore because I was not a teenager, longer preteen.
Okay, so it's just kind of like just a happenstance that you kind of woke up one day and it was all gone. Okay. And have you reported your experience to the authorities or any sort of legal or law enforcement?
No, um, really haven't because it would require like an investigation, and I don't want to go through that with how unreliable the police can be. And also, since everything was deleted, including the Discord account I have, I don't even have the screenshots for evidence.
You're right. I understand that.
I have is like some messages from freaking Polu, if I even still have that account. Don't even know if I was deleted or not because we kept them hidden for everything else.
And what do you want people watching this video right now to understand about these groups or individuals?
Like it's like a machine. It's whatever you do, it's never gonna be enough. As long as they can keep you under their grasp, they will do it. And they'll only discard you if one, your parents find out, even if they do that, they don't stop. Or two, you become too old for them to have their fun anymore. And so the best thing you can do, something that I didn't, tell your parents. I wish now we could go back and tell them everything, but now I'm too party. Probably can't tell. I'm like adults. Look back on it and be like, well, this happened to me. You were right. It was not so on the internet. I had to come the hard way.
Yeah, I think that's a very good message for everyone watching. You're not alone. People will help you. There's answers to whatever sort of suffering or things you're going through. There's an answer to it. Don't go through it alone. And I think that's a good statement you just had. And is there anything you'd say to someone who might be caught in a similar situation right now? Just talk to your parents like you just said?
Yes, but also if you feel like you cannot talk to your parents, literally just delete everything. As soon as you deleted everything, they have no more power over you, at least in the present. The trauma will always be there, but as soon as you can cut that off, and they know they can't reach you anymore, because it will say eventually deleted user, they'll just forget about you. They'll discard you.
And they'll just move on to someone else. Thank you so much for your time and everything. Do you have anything else to add?
Yes, two things. Because these guys, they're all really scared because they say they're untouchable, but they're scared. As soon as you delete their account, they will never show up to your house. Really, unless they can get you alone or they know you're brainwashed. If you delete their accounts and they somehow know your address, they probably won't come to your house because they know that if you deleted everything, that you're unwiring all the damage they've done, and so they'll just move on.
The actions set in motion by Bradley Cadenhead continue to make horrible impacts on several lives today. But you might have heard a different name throughout this whole case, the one that several arrested individuals claim to be a part of, and had even inspired Bradley Cadenhead himself to create 764. Order of Nine Angels. In the 80s, there was a time where everybody in the United States was scared of the satanic cults that supposedly preyed on children. The satanic panic lasted for several years, with the real problem being greatly exaggerated by the public, and lots of institutions and groups were accused of committing SRA, satanic ritual abuse. Cult-like organizations that worship Satan did exist. One new religious movement is the Order of Nine Angels, which was started in the 1960s. According to them, it was founded somewhere in the border between England and Wales by a woman involved in a secretive pre-Christian tradition. These groups were headed by a Grand Master/Mistress, but remained mainly separate until the late 1960s, when one Grand Mistress united three of these temples, Camelot, the Temple of the Sun, and the Noctulians, to form the ONA. It follows a form of Satanism tied with neo-Nazi beliefs. Order of Nine Angels takes this to the extreme. The main idea behind the group is that human history is divided into aeons that last around 2,000 years. Around 800 years in, each civilization faces a time of troubles that lasts very specifically between 398 to 400 years. In the current aeon, that civilization is the Western one, and its time of troubles has already passed. But according to them, this time it's different. the Judeo-Christian religion, supposedly infected Western civilization and what was once a pioneering entity imbued with elitist values and exalting the way of the warrior, has become essentially neurotic, inward-looking, and obsessed. They reject the idea of democracy and racial equality, claiming them to just be shams. The core belief is that they must stop this infection or else human evolution will be stopped. This explains the unusually high amount of political activism within the group compared to other occult groups. After this, in the new Aeon, a galactic civilization is going to form, composed of Aryans, that will colonize the Milky Way. If this wasn't far-fetched enough, the members also practice magic, specifically left-hand path magic. In Western occult groups that believe in magic, they split it into two parts: left hand, which is bad or evil magic, and right hand, which is good magic. Right hand magic conforms to some kind of moral or religious code, such as karma, whereas the left hand opposes whatever the right hand magic believes and rejects the existing beliefs. They teach that there are two realms: casual, which obeys the laws of physics, and acasual, which does not. To perform magic, you are supposed to draw energy from the acusal realm. They also believe in dark gods that exist in the acusal realm that are dangerous, and members are warned to not interact with them. One of them is a goddess named Baphomet, which is known in their text as a mature woman carrying a severed head. In their material, they say Nazi Germany is a practical expression of the satanic spirit, a burst of Luciferian light or of zest and power in an otherwise Nazarene, pacified and boring world. Unlike traditional religions such as Catholicism, where there's a central figure of authority such as the Pope, it operates in independent groups known as Nexians that form the broad network of associates known as the Collective with a K. It does have a hierarchy within it, however, and to climb up the ladder, you have to prove yourself by undertaking leadership of your group. They strongly dislike other Satanist groups such as the popular Church of Satan and Temple of Sat, saying that they just associate with the image of Satan and don't actually fully experience it. According to esotericism scholar Nicholas Goodrick Clark, Order of Nine Angels rejects the quasi-religious organization and ceremonial antics of the Church of Satan, the Temple of Sat, and other satanic groups. He believes that traditional Satanism goes far beyond the gratification of the pleasure principle and involves the arduous achievement of self-mastery, self-overcoming in the Nietzschean sense, and ultimately cosmic wisdom. His conception of Satanism is practical, with an emphasis on individual growth into realms of darkness and danger through practical acts of prowess, endurance, and the risk of life. Like any religion, it has its own practices and is highly elitist. It has very strict membership requirements in some groups, and according to them, the goal of the Satanism of the Order of Nine Angels is to create a new individual through direct experience, practice, and self-development, with the grades of the Order of Nine Angels system being highly individual, based on the initiate's own practical and real-life acts, instead of merely performing certain ceremonial rituals. Basically, they want you to do something forbidden, against the status quo, illegal, etc., to shake off the cultural and political condition of a society. In their mythology, as per one of their main texts, the Naos, the core system of the Order of Nine Angels is the sevenfold way, also known as the hebdometry. In order of increasing rank, these are neophyte, initiate, external adept, internal adept, master/mistress, grandmaster/mousa, and immortal. According to the group, only very few have reached the master/grandmaster stages, and at least in 1989, only 4 individuals have ever reached the rank of master. As mentioned before, there is no formal initiation process or recruitment, and must take increasingly difficult challenges to progress up their hierarchy. For example, to become an external adept, you have to sit for an entire night at one lonely spot without moving or sleeping. For the next stage, internal adept, you are supposed to stay away from human society for at least 3 months, or usually 6 months without any contact or support from others. To become a master, you have to live alone in a dark, isolated cave for a lunar month, which lasts roughly 30 days, which is the time it takes for the moon to cycle through all its phases, from new moon to new moon. This is aptly named the Ritual of the Abyss. One of their major practices is known as the Insight Roles, which is basically living a life completely different to before, such as being undercover in a politically extreme group for an extended amount of time to gain experience and contribute to the associates' evolutionary superiority. Order of Nine Angels continues to be a secret cult, with them being linked to terrorism in recent times, and also linked to 764, the main subject of today's video. While many try to link themselves to this group out of desperation to be seen as one of them, their activities have spread online drastically. And although it's difficult to trace them, their impacts are felt with each individual from 764. The real danger doesn't lie in the posers, but the actual members themselves. And alright guys, that wraps up some disturbing internet cults. This was kind of one huge cult, the beginning being the main chunk of it, and the Order of Nine Angels kind of explaining why a lot of those guys are a part of it. So they're kind of part of two cults. A lot of these guys are getting arrested right now, thank God, and hopefully that continues. But like I said, this group is still active to this day. So, watch yourself online. The internet's a dangerous place, and just be careful who you talk to and who you trust, and just all that other stuff. I mean, I hope you learned a lot from this video. This was, educational. Hopefully this can protect you from some creeps down the road, and hopefully the end of 764 is close. These people are disgusting pieces of trash, and I hope each one never gets out of jail. Thank you so much for watching. This was Snook, and I'll see you next time. Bye.